Is it recording? It is recording. Okay. And go back to there. All right. And I'm going to, and then Wenqing, are you on? Can you unmute yourself? Let's see. Let me look. I thought I saw her. Wenqing.
Yeah, I see her, but she's muted.
Okay. I think she's unmuted now. Nope. Try one more time. Wenqing, you're still on mute. Sorry, let me see if I can unmute you. I don't think I can.
No, you can't force unmute. You can only force mute.
Right, just asked you to unmute.
Yep.
All right, well, I'll start.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, very good.
Hooray, that's great.
All right, so let me
Hold on.
you. All right, and all right. We'll go Wenqing, we're pleased to have you. Thank you for it was almost a year ago when we were supposed to, when all this pandemic began, was like around, I think it was April last year when we were supposed to have you come visit us and everything started going awry.
Yes.
So
Yes.
exactly a year later, but good to see you.
Finally, I see you on screen.
All right. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Wenqing. So do you want to present? Do you have your PowerPoint slides?
Yes. If you put me on the share screen, then I can already start.
Okay, I think you can.
Folks, did you see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm so glad I'm already made this talk, but I'm still stuck in the pandemic, stuck in Europe. Hi, everyone. And it's so ironic, and because my visa problem, I hope this month I can go back to China, and I'm really happy that I can talk and see you virtually on screen, because I think among the orchid lovers in the US, San Francisco Orchid Society is the one that I know most, and all my best friends from Orchid Worlds. Our world is mostly concentrated in that area. And my talk is come with me to Western China to see the fascinating orchids.
Wenqing,
Yes.
so we can see your camera, we see your face and hear you, but we can't see the presentation.
All right, then I have to go back and to see what's going on. Do you, how could I turn the screen on? Not me.
I think it's at the bottom. It'll say share screen. There should be a green button.
I saw it from the very beginning.
Jeff, you enabled it for multiple people to share the screen?
Yes, she can she's my co-host. So do you see at the bottom of the screen, do you see like a green share screen button with an arrow?
Oh,
If you put your cursor near the edge of the screen, it might.
So sometimes if your presentation is full screen, you don't see the buttons.
Oh,
You know, so you have to make your presentation smaller, but not.
Oh, I'm so happy. It's already my 10th, or I don't know what time, because that's still, but basically I not Zoom that order.
that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, now, how about now?
Yep, it looks fine. Perfect.
Okay, I can finally show my screen to you guys. Yes. Okay. Now the technique problem is solved. I'm not a tech person, but I think you guys know that since nearly 20 years, we need botanic tours in China. Because China has very special and rich orchids. And also one of the reasons is it become one of our main incomes for the orchid business. And recent years, we had a lot of cooperation with OCA like organization, which make me feel like there's always some meaning, quite important meaning to show people how the orchids are growing in a habitats, how to give you a lot of hints, how can you cultivate them in your greenhouse. Also, of course, China is Far East for a lot of Westerners, and they not just seeing a lot of fantastic plants, but they also enjoy the culture, the food, the ethnic group, environment. That's all in all a very interesting thing for experience. And somehow this theme is also one of the most favorite subjects that people want to hear my talk. So basically, I think most of you know the post Holger Perner, post my late husband time, what's going on with me and with my company. And fortunately, with the strong back of the orchid world, we're still keep going, and we're still doing some new things that this business could keep going on. So we're situated in the center, one of the center of the biodiversity center. And I always show this everywhere when I'm giving talk. What's about what is the biodiversity center? How many biodiversity centers you have in the world? And fortunately, the place I am here on the lowland, I have my lab, and here I have my Superpedium in a high mountain. So it's a really unique place that we're situated. That's at the end of the Himalaya mountain region, at the most east end. So you have the lowland where I could have my lab, my subtropical and tropical orchids. And if you drive further, 50 kilometers, then you're in the National Park Huanglong, where we have our Superpedium and other temperate terrestrial orchid production base. In the lowland, of course, it's always overcasted. That's the actually natural greenhouse to allow us to have very humid all year round climate. And this actually, if one can control good moisture, the orchids can grow really well. So I think this picture people also see a lot of times. This is our greenhouse, nursery, and if the tour is taking part in Szechuan province, we always have half day in our lowland lab and nursery. So still the production is keep going on. We have some shade houses, we have some big greenhouse and lab, and keep producing orchids. And I often show this one to a lot of people because this is our duck chamber that we let the germination happening here. But this all year round 18 degrees centigrade environment is also for the Cypripediums and other terrestrial orchids production, because the lights are green, the plants would not recognize there's even light there. That's amazing part. Maybe a lot of orchid friends don't know how the terrestrial, especially how the Cypripediums are produced. This is a place. The normal light racks, I think if you are familiar with the orchid products, it's not a special thing. And there was once we also produced a lot of blueberry, all kinds of economic crops that we are trying to help the people, the farmers in the mountain, to have some alternative incomes. And meanwhile, it's a support for nature conservation. So we did partially our income from this economic crops too. But recent years, the market is already full. So this one, we are not doing much now. But of course, we do a lot of media ourselves. We'll still keep going doing like this because there's quite some, especially from Europe, especially for the terrestrial orchids. There's still some nurseries, some hobbyists are buying our media. These media are already even with pH per adjusted, and so they could just put in ROR, cook them, and reconfirm the pH, and then they can use it already. Well, for the Chinese behavior, I'll call it like 3-minute instant noodle, but it's just that simple. And we all the time cooperate with the our authority. It's a quite complicated procedure, but even it take like 4 to 6 months, especially in pandemic time. If they're cautious, like how they treat the virus in China, they just keep controlling. And we do so far pretty well with them. And then we still have this highland Cypripedium production base, and where we produce all the Cypripediums. And we mainly do the line breeding with species, and also we do hybrids, mainly primary hybrids. We do all the selections. So now I would start my journey with you guys from the by introducing you one of the frontiers in the Western China. So I think probably a lot of people know, if you're in the plant world, there's a guy called Wilson. He's a Briton. He's a very proud Briton. And but he had most successful career in America. So he later became the director of Harvard Arboretum. He's one of the most famous frontier for the plant world in Western China. So he was sending by Weiss Nursery for finding a dove tree in Western China, and he starts actually his tour from Wuhan, and then he was coming up from Yangtze. He started his tour there, and then his focus was in Szechuan, where I am from, and then he was in Yunnan quite 3 times in Szechuan. So I often show orchid lovers his sentence, did the fates ordain that I should live in Western China, I would ask for nothing better than to be domiciled in Songpan. Songpan is the last county if we go up into the mountain to our nursery in the National Park of Huanglong. So he already wrote that's a really comfortable, nice city over 100 years ago. That's the Silk Road, very important town that people do a trade from lowland to the Tibet highland. And he, of course, also collected some Superpedium plant in the national park, nowadays National Park in Huanglong. Even some type specimen like Superpedium smithii. So there's another frontier from Austria. His name is Hendrik von Handelmatt-City. And America, very famous Joseph Francis Charles Rock. So Joseph Rock was the one even till the 50s in last century, till the Communist Party kicked him out of China. He has been mainly activated in Yunnan area, in Lijiang area. So even today, if you go to Lijiang to do your botanizing, you still see his museum, small museum in one of the little villages at the mountain foot of Yulong Snow Mountain. So how do they look like in their eyes of China in over 100 years ago? So these plant hunters, of course, where they have been, it's not the cultivated lowland, it's not an agricultural lowland, but mainly in the ethnic group people, because the Han Chinese had the advanced culture, and then they drove all the ethnic group, including Tibetan, Nashi, and Yi people, into the mountains. So the lowland, there's not so much to explore, but if you just go over, well, today it's just 1 or 2 hours into the mountain, then you are in the plant land. So this is one of the photos that Wilson took. How does it look like 100 years ago? And the place, this is the Yi place. Well, they have by then, some calling names Lolo. Of course, that's a discriminating name for them. So they were ethnic group that was driven up into the mountain by strong hand culture, but the place where they are living is the place where you find most orchids from China. And this is the Tibet from Songpan area, where I just give you the description that Wilson described. So by then, before 100 years, you have this Songpan city and surrounded by high city wall. And around 6 o'clock, he described that the Han Chinese is just driving all the Tibetans out of the town, and they close the gate for the safety because it's true, by then they are sort of robbers, so they sometimes just broke in, grabbed the properties, killed some Han Chinese soldiers where they are stationing there for the trade, for the Silk Road trade. That's a fascinating world if you read some literature 100 years ago. So now, after 100 years later, if we want to hunt some more orchids, what do we do in Western China? Here is Western China in the meaning of our orchid hunting of my tour. So actually, the Western China in the big thing is including Xinjiang Tibetan, but the most orchid-rich place is, of course, the most east-south of Tibet, West Szechuan and Yunnan, and part of Guanxi province. So, and also part of Guizhou. This place called, actually in China would say Southwest China. And the center is of course Chengdu. Chengdu is, from the view of point, is geographically quite in the center of the whole land, because from Chengdu, if you take a flight to Beijing, to Shanghai, to Hong Kong, even to Bangkok, it's between 2 to 3 hours. So it's a quite convenient place for the traffic. And it is the capital city of Szechuan province. So the tour I would leave you, the first tour is the tour in Szechuan. You land in the center of the big basin, Chengdu, which is all year around, a lot of days overcasted. And today is already the hub of the traffic, a center of economy, politics, industry of Western China. Maybe I should also add it's a military center of the whole China, because if we talk about the Tibetan issues, the issue of border lines with India, it's a center of a military too. And although it's always overcasted, this is maybe 5 or 6 days that we could really get nice view, that you look into the west, you already see the northeast edge of Tibet. So this mountain tips, in the photos, what you see is the one of the 4 peaks called Siguliang Mountain. So it's four sister peaks. And of course, behind it, if you go to further west, there's the most highest peak in Szechuan province. That's already 24,000 feet, which is really a high mountain. But on the lowland where we situate is roughly about 500 meters. So it's amazing place. There's no wonder why that's the center of the biodiversity hotspot in the whole world, because on the lowland you have subtropical plants, but if you drive within 3, 4, 5 hours, you already vertically to get through all the climate zone that you can have all kinds of plants. And also the giant panda, the snow leopard, the golden stub-nosed monkeys, all kinds of real animals, pheasants, birds, partridges. That's the, of course, wonderland for the nature lovers. And on the way into the mountain, you already pass a UNESCO cultural heritage site. There's a dam called Dujiangyan Dam. Of course, from now on, if you go all the time stream up to the Ming Valley, the first dam is this after 2,200 years from Szechuan, Qing dynasty, the first emperor in China. We already have this so sophisticated irrigation system that is now today is still using, and all the material by then they use this bamboos, rocks, and they built up this so sophisticated irrigation system. And now, of course, if you drive along this road to the Tibet highland, you start your plant hunting tour. You already enjoy the UNESCO Cultural Heritage Site. So it is amazing. Always you see it's so simple, but if you get into the mechanism how it works still today. Although people stopped using some concrete for some part of the dam. And it's also one of the so mystery culture place, because people know, okay, Yellow River and Yangtze River is like the Nile for the Egypt culture. Our two big rivers of in China, one is the Yangtze. So Sichuan is the only province that has a too big a river. So Yangtze River, we always wonder where the civilization comes from. In recent years, we just dug all more and more quite significant different from the Yellow River culture, like this bronze. You see the big eyes, big ears, and it's just recent years now they dug just more and more. But it's funny, people says if you dig more, you get more confused. This is the fascinating culture that waiting for the scientists to reveal how it developed. But at least now we got a lot more evidence from the myth, because it's really just cope with the myth with the Yangtze River civilization was and is. So in before we get into mountain, I still want to show you the orchids. Already starts with the lowland, because if you drive like 1 hour, 30 to 40 kilometers south of Chengdu, you would see a ancient town called Huanglongxi, means Huanglong Creek. There, it's in the river culture revolution. There's a small town in the corner that the Red Guards just to happen didn't destroy it, and then they built it even enlarge it in the same style. So you could partially see some wooden structure from Qin Dynasty, and you see there's a temple. And if you get in there, you already see on the stage for the Eastern like festival now. Qingming is our festival for the ancestor to go to the cemetery to thank our ancestors, to memorize our culture and so if you go into there, also the Chinese New Year, you already see some interesting drawing on the wall. So it is, of course, the Cymbidium. And if I could ignore my screen, so you will see there's already some Cymbidium. The culture started really with the again, the Qing Dynasty, the Confucius. And if you see more, of course, you see some Cymbidium in everybody's windowsill. So that's the land of orchid culture. And I can just give you some example of the Cymbidium culture. Well, in Chengdu area, the most cultivated Cymbidium, I would say, is the Torticipalum variation Longibracteatum, because that's the habitat. And Szechuan is very famous with this Chunjian, means spring sword. That's the variation of Longibracteatum. And in exact this temple, you see a lot of standard Cymbidium. That is Szechuanicum. That's really interesting endemic Cymbidium, large flower Cymbidium, which should be the most hardy one, because even in the winter, sometimes it gets slow. They have their habitat in the lower mountain around the Chengdu Basin. They can even stand some frost. And now if we get into the mountain further, we see some nice Cymbidium. This one, we took it from the holy Buddhismus mountain, Mountain Omei. This is just under the forest of bamboo. So the lowland, maybe there's not much diversity, but you see quite some oriental Cymbidiums. And this one's also in Mount Omei. Well, Omei is one of the plant kingdom of orchids, because you often hear quite a lot of genus with the name Omeiensis and the ferns. That's a place that you have a lot of Buddhismus temples. That's why you have some infrastructure. You go there, you can enjoy some plants. And of course, the people surrounding in the Chengdu city, they grow their special clone of the very, very sophisticated clone names that the Chinese is giving. So the world of Chinese orchid in China, in South Korea, in Japan, they all the culture since 4,000 or 5,000 years, and with the literature was already 2,000 or 3,000 years. So they have their all kinds of clone name, and one grows around 2000 year, around year 2000, the new millennium year was it on top. You cannot imagine one grows, it could reach like a million US dollar worth. But even though the circle is still quite narrow, small, but the love for these Chinese Cymbidium is still there, and they grow it in a very small rooms. Maybe they have 100 or 200 plants, but they are just trying to give the most optimum condition, and to make one growth become 2, 3, 4, 5 within 1 year. And they often have their also system, like if this clone, so-called super clone, there's 200 plants in whole China, then one growth should worth 1 million Chinese yuan. And the next year, based on the growth, could become like 600 or 1,000, then the price will become 1/4 million yuan. So this kind of road, I'm not interested in. We're never get in. That's because they don't welcome the modern technology to duplicate them, to mass propagate them. That's a very interesting world. The same in Japan, the South Korea, but that's not completely true, because partially they already stopped the clone or a zipling production in the lab. And then there's Encephalium, that is a species that you can grow from very tropical place up to the north. Encephalium is nice, flower in summer, and has nice scent too. Guanxi always is one of the most Asian species people grow. Well, the interesting thing about Oriental Chinese orchids, the Gensua, is there's so many variations, and really people give every variation that is showy, rare, a fancy name, and then the business already starts there. But of course, meanwhile, you enjoy it. And one of the interesting species, maybe especially in California, a lot of people is growing, is the Cymbidium Schillerianum. And it's a quite tough one, because this one stands in front of our lab. It can stand frost, short frost, roughly about 2 weeks. 2 or 3 hours in the morning if you have the frost, and it flowers just fantastic. And after repotting, they just grow one more. They're happy. They can stand all year round outside in my lab, in front of my lab. This is already the one in 2019. It reached peak. That I make 2 of my staffs to do a taping, counting. The result is like in 2018, we repotted. 2019, it reached 66 flower stems, and the flower number is 880. So last year is a bit down, but I guess it's because We didn't, it's funny enough, we didn't give them much food. The water they got is the wastewater from a fish tank, from an aquarium. I don't know whether that's a good fertilizer. So they're pretty happy. And then I introduced you another one now. It's getting one more familiar in the Western world. That's a Cymbidium Wensanensi. So Wensanensi, you have Wensanensi. Wensan is a place that is a lot of orchid habitat there. It's a lot of orchid come from there. So it's comparable to every three xylem. That is one maybe in the West already know quite a long time. Has really nice banana scent and beautiful flower. And then we have some Mastazy. That is, at least in Japan, I see a lot of individual clones, but they don't have a really nice pink tongue on the lip. So this is something interesting on the standard Cymbidium. And then I introduced you a Novianum. It's already quite known in your world. But the Chinese Guanxi is also an interesting species that Philip Cripps always sells. That's a Ibolium by Novianum. That's a natural hybrid. But from the size, it's very large. It's larger than the Novianum, than the Ibolium. And from the plant itself, well, we see it's a nice species. And then you go to the tea house in Chengdu in the temple. You still see today it's getting rare and rare. You have the bamboo chair, you have the tea, you enjoy the whole day in the park. And this one is from Britain, the David. He's one of the British warden that saved one of their last Superpedium called Ciolus. So he did the lab work. We have quite some exchange with Superpedium propagation. Now we finally get into the mountain. Now you see, even in the gorge like Ming Valley, you have already very nice paved road, but with a lot of curves. So how does it look like 100 years ago? Because that's a Silk Road. Already the Chinese, they bring up their brick teas, the products from lowland, and they bring down to the lowland some Chinese medicine raw material, some furs from the Tibetan. That's a terrible, terrible road. And this is exactly the Chinese Wilson, what happened to him. And he was hit by the rock and lying on there waiting for the rescue because there's no means to get him out of the mountain. And during his waiting lying there, the Caliban, the animals is just crossing him from his body all the time. So that's 100 years ago. Now, if you're driving on the road, on the good paved road, if you're looking up on the slope, you still see from time to time this remain of the road that are still used maybe 30, 40 years ago, because the vast development just happened in recent several 10 years. So that's the modern China. If we want to see orchids, it's already so easy. In one day, we already get into the mountain. We already see a lot of plants along the same valley that the Wilson did. So even with the high peak here is already 5,500. You got really nice paved road that you can just stop the bus. You can just still walk 2 or 3 minutes up the slope. Then you already see the orchids. So now the stop in the mountain I would bring you in is a UNESCO World Heritage Site called Squander National Park that I have been working and still working as the senior advisor in the job is giving the advice for nature protecting, for park management, for rare orchids in the mountains propagation. Also, the nursery is situating in the buffer zone of this national park. That's the main tourist attraction in China, and it's in Asia, and it's getting more and more known in the Western world. So you have this tufa area full with, here we have over 3,000 turkey, green, blue lakes and waterfalls. So along these lakes or beautiful valley, what you would see is, of course, a paradise of Cypripedium. We often see that's in nature garden made by a nature mother, because this tufa formation just keeps the forest retrieve, and then they give some spots that has some moss, has some dirt, has some bushes, and then the tufa formation has a very loose structure. So even the plants sometimes stand in the water, but at the root spot, they get so rich mineral, they get so rich air because the water is running. So there in the peak time, you see over 20,000 flowering stem of Cypripedium. And of course, one of the most famous is the Cypripedium tibeticum. It's on the Tibet highland. So there's millions of plants of tens of thousands of flowers. And the other one is the yellow one is the flavum. And of course, the tourists is keeping on the Broadway that you just look down into the valley. And with the special permit, I often need around 10 to 12 people into the segway and get into the place that you can exactly observe how they grow and what they need, the condition. And they were just fantastic. And recent years, we have already, one of my jobs is coordinating the international and domestic research on the ecosystem, on the influence of the tourism on the plants and the pollination and all kinds of DNA thing. But this is not my strong point, because what we do is propagating in the lab, but we offer them material, we offer them the basic knowledge about the place. And they just grow so happy in their nature garden. And now I want to show you side by side, besides the huge pouch tibeticum, you see a tiny one of the tiniest Cypripedium Badoffianum. This is not the type specimen yellow form. This is the brown reddish form. And we often say there's also interesting naming from the Shakespeare play Henry V, because this tiny pouch looked like the butt of the drunk Bardolph's nose, red nose. That's so tiny. They also growing so happy. And now that's a place around the altitude from 2000, around 2,500 meters. And if you go down the valley and to the lower part, then you're in another Cypripedium land. Well, it's about 300 to 500 meters altitude difference. With the ranges accompany, you would see the spot-leaved Szechuanense that is described by my late husband. And you have some, again, tiny Cypripedium plectrochilum. In the Ododendron land, you see here the tiny Cypripedium hiding there. Maybe you already see some nice spot with my mouth. So with my mouse here, you see already interesting plectrochilum. They are just forming groups. Again, in the low bushes that they can get some light. Of course, the happy Ron on his birthday. So I think the San Francisco Society, everybody knows Ron, the big Ron. And then you just see how small he is there in front of the Gigantium. That's a Lily-relative cardiocrinum. So our journey keeps going on. We get into the highland of grassland in the Tibet land. And where you always see the golden roof of temple in the mountains, on the grassland, you see their prey flags, and you see there are millions yaks by the season of the plant hunting, because it's already getting on summer. Until the September, November, October, they let their yaks coming down. Well, when we're talking coming down, it's already 3,600 meters. That's just still the Tibetan highland, but on the grassland. So it's like somewhere in Africa, but much higher altitude. They have their yaks. They have their still a way of moving around, way of keeping their herd. And they have their tents. And there I would show you two big birds. Oh, that's not what I want here. That's the black-necked crane. So these birds, they're flying to the grassland too, because they can have their youngsters. They find rich on food on the grassland in summer, and these are already one of the real crane. And in this one's not my orchid main focused tour, but in autumn you find millions and millions gentians on the in September and October. So the tour for the orchids, mainly for orchids, is mainly in May or June. This is a season in autumn in the mountain. There you always see some friendly Tibetan family. This guy, he just came close to me, says, "Hey, how about just get into our tent and we offer you some butter tea?" So his wife prepared some butter tea for us, but the butter tea is just some butter dough like thing. They have their milk tea, they have their butter, they have their barley powder, and then they put it into a sort of soup like thing. So after one tea, you're already okay for the rest of your day. You don't need any meal anymore. That's very heavy stuff. And now we keep going on our journey. We come into the foot of this highest peak in Szechuan, the Gonga, the over 24,000 feet place. Well, now this is, fortunately, you're not going to have this adventure anymore, because this kind of pending bridge is already moved away, and they build up all kinds of infrastructure that you can get in close to have a look at some nice Pleone. So I think Pleone is also one of the really interesting showy Chinese genus that is really beautiful. And then the same habitat, relatively lower place, you find some slipper orchid, Cypripedium fasciolate, one of the largest Cypripedium with a very large pouch. And then to the contrast, one of the really tiny, beautiful Cypripedium is the Wardii, the same area. So this is my hand. You see how tiny it is? But they are just fantastic. And we're so happy we started 2 or 3 years ago at cooperation with this, the one I showed you. This one is in Szechuan, but the seeds now we got it from Yunnan, from the Forest Research Institution. So they start their research project. We joined them, and we do the propagation part. So now we can start to produce really strong seedlings in our lab since 2 years. And these tiny one in the flasks, they are really rich, like a flowering size or having flowering size. The tiny Cypripedium or Paphiopedilum, the good thing is they reach the mature quite quick. So I'm hoping in 1 or 2 years, we already have some flowering plants. The seeds and the pollen we got is from Yunnan. At the same place, you find a Lelia Junkiana. Well, it's named after Lelia. And this is again a larger than the Szechuanicum I just showed you, a spot-leaved Cypripedium. And if we keep our journey on in that area, you already see some locals have some orchids on their roof. They are from the region that on all the slope you see Bobophyllums, you see all kinds of epiphyte in the subtropical area. And the one we see now on the slope is nobile. So unfortunately, the closest distance you can see is already gone, but they are still safe high up there. So I mentioned the big concept about the West China will be the red pot, but our plant hunting, our orchid observation tour is mainly on the Szechuan. I already showed you. We start with this. We go here. We go up in the Huangnou National Park. We go to the west side of the grassland, and then we go to this part of where we just have been. Now our tour goes to uh, 1 hour and the 15 minutes flight from Chengdu to Kunming, Yunnan. Yunnan is, of course, a kingdom of plants in China. They have so rich plant resource in terms of trees, bushes, and herbs. So this is the capital city of Yunnan. Again, that's becoming so modern now, but in the center, I believe now this part is already gone, but partially they still keep it in this old style. Traditional building places, there's still market. And you see the main orchid resources, of course, the Cymbidium. And there's already some flask. And people, again, grown their Cymbidium, the Gensua Cymbidium, in their sophisticated pot. And the main trade article are still the Cymbidium. And now we start our journey from the capital city here, again towards west, northwest, into the mountain to see some orchids. But on the way into the mountain, we already see some banana flower-like thing. That's a quite unique thing in Yunnan because that's only genus and only species of this Mozilla lasiocapa. That the flower lasts like 240 days. That's they just grow along the fields, and the leaves they feed their pigs. The farmers feed their pigs with the leaves. That's very impressive, interesting plant. And now we reach the UNESCO World Heritage Site in Lijiang, ancient town. And because what we want to see is behind the city, there is a snow jade mountain, slow dragon jade mountain, where they again see a lot of orchids. And again, this is a photo of 100 years ago, that if you look at the Nashi rich family, so this guy has a typical Qing dynasty costume. I think he's the master of the house. He has some official position in the region. That's why he's having the Qing dynasty costume. But if you see their maids here, they have their costume exactly like 100 years later. So the elder generation is still having their costume and still have their turban on the head. But the younger generation is just like anywhere else in the city in China. They have their Nikes on their feet. They have all just having their T-shirts, eating their McDonald's. That's a westernized or Americanized China culture. And behind that, this UNESCO Cultural Heritage Society have the UNESCO on natural heritage side, that is the Yü Long Xue San. Yu means jade, Long means dragon, Yü Long, Xue snow. So it's the a Yedrak snow mountain, and where you can again enjoy your plant hunting. And before you get into the orchids, you already see quite some showy Rose Korea. You see some nice Incavilia, and the meadow is just full. But what make me really worry is if we observe since 10 years, we now hit most of the global warming problem because these plants should show up and flower before their monsoon time and their dry time. Their dry time is getting just more and more drier. And if you go there and see, it's not like the early time you see a lot of plants on the meadow. Now you see there's here and there on the wet patches. The rest, they're just suffering. They're still there. They come back when the raining season starts, but the flower is just getting more and more less. I hope um, it could coming back to normal. Um, but of course, the big environment is getting more and more harsh for the plants. And if we get into more closer to the foot of some glacier place, and then we already see quite a lot of Superpilium again. This is some lump petal Tibeticum adapt to the local, especially in the forest. So that's a variation of Forsythia. It was described by my husband that was on former time Forsythia, but he synced. That's just variation of Tibeticum with some pale pouch color or a flower color, but long petals. And if we see again 100 years ago, if you have the spotted leaf, this one a smaller one, quite a lot of Superpedium macritasium, and now it's still there today. That's a national park. Fortunately, it more or less protected, but the local people, of course, they are allowed to get in there. There's always some poaching still happening, and also because the climate, the chance you see them in healthy full bloom time is just getting less. That makes us, of course, very worried. And then in the same habitat, you see some Bobocotyledus of this beautiful Pleona genus. And again, the Lijangensi that I just showed you with the Wadiite together. So this is a habitat in Vietnam, but geographically they are in a one whole region. And if you reach the bottom of the old glacier place, and you find again very tiny slipper forestii. The tiny is more or less the same like the bud of Yenum I just showed you. You saw a thumb there. That's the size of the plant and the flowers, just like your fingernail. If they're not flowering, of course, you don't see them at all. And in the same area, you coming down towards south, you are in the area of Dali, where you have the famous tourist attraction of this three pagoda temple. And behind the temple, there's a mountain called Changshan. Changshan mountain region is such an orchid-rich area. And now if you go on end of April, beginning of May, you see one of the rarest Phalaenopsis arbiflora on the rocks in the moss. They're just fantastic. And in the same area, you would see Phalaenopsis aurita. In the same area, you see some nice corymbosa of the Sologeny. And if the journey goes on, you cross the Mekong, you on the way to some of the next destination for the orchids, you see one lady with costume in there. She's standing in front of her house and greeting us and say, "Hey, come on in, just have a cup of tea." Then we just see there's some seeds laying on her roof, and there you already see some Cymbidium Gigantifolium on the roof. So we had our tea. We say we want to see the next orchid place. This is again the place that is a protected area, and you get out of your bus. We arrange some local small vans, and people get into the valley. And here you get to see a epiphyte, one of the rarest Phalaenopsis, the only golden colored Phalaenopsis again, the Forestiae. So this one, if you want to cultivate them, growing in the living moss is the method that works best. And in the raging, in the closer raging, you see another golden sleeper that is Amniacum. Again, in this old irrigating system, walking on this very narrow trail. And if you look up above, you see the Amniacum just sticking out of the slope. And they have a very interesting location that the bushes above is giving them some protection, but they are looking throughout the slopes. They're getting on some morning and evening light. They are happily growing there. And if you go a little bit further south, back towards a little bit north, 1 hour north of Kunming, 1 hour south of Kunming, you see a Wenqing. This is what I just showed you in the Wenqing. And if you keep going down to Wenqing area, there's a really, really rare orchid, Cypripedium subtropicum. I always say, like the name subtropicum already indicates you that's a place has some subtropical environment, but you grow the Cypripedium is growing there. So that's the border area with Vietnam. That was a war area 30 or 40 years ago. No, 50 years or more than 50. That was still in my high school time. So that's about quite some time ago. But now it's a area with mining. It's still one of the place that with mining. I think one of the dangerous area that you need two guides. One is the guide, botanical guide that show you the plants. One is a guide for not stepping on some landmine. And they flower in July. This very high in the deep forest subtropicum. That's a fascinating big flowers, warm growing, subtropical condition, Cypripediums. That is, again, a challenge for us in the lab. Again, we see Professor Zhang Hong from the Forest Institute from Kunming in Yunnan. He's offering us seeds and we challenge it. At the beginning, it was so difficult. They germinated, but by the replating, they always just die. Maybe we tried 20, 30 different media. Now we can really produce some strong seedlings. Again, the challenging is they don't grow, they don't die, they don't grow. And unfortunately, we can now produce some numbers, and we give Professor Jiang, Dr. Jiang in the Wenqing area, right? The direct line is about 2 kilometers away. They set up a natural protected area that they confiscated like around 100, maybe less than 100, but since 10 years they grow quite well there. So there's fungi at the mother plants. Now quite some plants already go back to the place where they come from. I hope they can help with some population come back and when they come back to the place where they are got from. And then we found just on the road, across roadside, small roadside, a tree full of epiphyte of Versonia. The Phalaenopsis Versonia is the most broad distributed in the whole country, because up to the north there's even some semi winter hardy one, and down to the most south of China you still see some, and they have most variations. Some has even greenish flower petals. Most likely you have this a pinkish coloration, and in some dry river valley you see a really nice big flower, which Dr. Zhang has some plants. I was always begging him, give me some seed. Till now I still don't have that seed pot yet. Maybe he's always busy when it flowers. He's always on road to try to record, try to find some orchids. That's amazing. I don't know how many flowers, but it's just full with that tree. Now the third journey I would lead you will be a little bit north, northwest to Szechuan, and also north to Yunnan, northwest to Yunnan, the Guanxi. The Guanxi province, that's also a very orchid-rich region, especially in their coast area. So you have Guilin, that's one of the most famous place that is familiar with the Western tourists. Exactly the region you see a lot of sleeper orchids. And there's one place called Yachang National Orchid Reserve. That is the only one interesting reserve dedicated to the orchids there. So that might the only one in China also maybe. I don't know whether it could be the only one in the whole world, but that's really just around 10 years ago, they stopped the logging, but then they were training the directors from this region to say, hey, how you guys can find some alternative income source. So one of the scientists introduced some slipper orchids in the custom area. And then one director says, okay, if that's a Paphiopedilum, we have millions of it. Then of course the scientists start to explore the place. That's really a orchid-rich place. The most famous place of orchid is their Hazeltissimum. It's really, if they said they have several 100,000 flower stems, but I believe them because the part that we can show our scientists, because that's a place that they don't open to any public. So we go there as a orchid aliens, conservation aliens, OCA trip. If you have the purpose, if your organization from orchid conservation, from scientists, you're always welcome. So you get off the bus because that's a place you walk like 10 minutes. You're already so close on the boardway. You just get to observe the plants right in front of your eyes. You see some Hazeltissimum there, and you see a lot of dianthum, but they flower in September, October. And it's always some Hohonense. This is the Phalaenopsis, one species we saw there. So basically, this is the Guanxi area. If you go so small south down, you find a Paphiopedilum concolor-like place. That's Helene and but basically, of course, the real plants in Guangxi. Besides this park, it's so difficult to get to know. And another place on Guizhou, the microsome on the first photo that I was selfie myself. That's the only place that I got my collection that connection that I can go there, but it's getting just less and less. But if you want to really lead some group tour and do a fashion that is easy to approach, that is easy to take photos, to observe, it's not getting it's not easy. But nevertheless, that's a big country like the one in Szechuan, in Yunnan. We always have some convenient place to show you. So these are the 3 tours that I need you in as examples of the orchids in Western China. And I do a summary here now. Of course, on the tour, you see some raised plants, you see what direction, what slope, on what slope, what is the surrounding bushes, vegetations that give you always nice indication. How could I cultivate my plants in my greenhouse? What kind of condition I should give them? And you see the always interesting plants surrounding this focus plant. You see rare orchids is always our goal. And this one is at the Burma place that now is again totally locked down because of the COVID. Because you only find the 15 case there, the whole city is already locked down. So that's why I guess the dictatorship can control COVID so well. That's a place we have been. And if you throw a tiny stone, it's already in Myanmar. You see the fantastic, the tree rhododendron. So here, you can use really some nice equipment to observe some birds. And you get into the bunker. This is not my camera. My tiny camera cannot get there. This is some camera from a ranger. They gave me the, we actually, our group, I had two groups actually observe at the correct time that the male bird just came back with food to feed the male in the nest. It's already by the time of the observing plant, they are hatching the eggs. And then we saw one of the most rare snub-nosed monkey called black snub-nosed monkey. So there's around 1,000 to 2,000. The population, from the population, I would say it's even less than the giant panda. And they built up a 3 family to feed them in a certain area, because these are very shy animals. They feed them with lichens, and right beside there you see some Calansi tricarinata. So that's a very interesting place. And you see the local people there herd their pigs, and there's a very short clip. That's Frank from Germany. And then you already see the monkeys there. They're getting their food. So that's some very interesting thing on the tour you can experience. Of course, the tea ceremony, you can always go into everywhere you have tea shops, and even you don't buy, you can get in there and see if they're to have some nice tea and pick up always what you want. If you're in the Tibetan area, the host always give you their Sunday dress to try out. The Erica from England is looking really nice in their Sunday dress. And you get some interesting food experience too. This is just not Chinese food. This one is the Jimpo ethnic group dishes, their specialty. They put it on directly on some leaves on the table, and then they turn the lazy Susie, and our guests just communicating with the local rangers that they showed us the birds, showed us the plants. And if you, unfortunately, the eldest one, you deserve a chicken head too. And then there's the Asian Canton. If this is in Tengchong, if you go there again, like in the temple, in Chengdu, you see the Cymbidium on the wall. You just smile to them. You don't have to know what they're trying to talk to you, or whether you understand, they could understand you. You just show them the picture you took. This Japanese happened to caught or to on the road to observe a trip in the morning. They just happened to see there's a village that has a water splashing festival like the Thailander. So this is a Thai ethnic group which shared the same ancestor with the Thai people. And then they were stopped by them. They see their performance. They get wet. They get even the food. Then this is some interesting happening on our tour. Then our tour just postponed half days. This is the one trip not on the Western Orchid, not on the Western China Orchid, but on the South China trip. That we go to Fujian Hakka. Then we we see some orchid. Beside orchids, we see some culture. And the Happy Mary is talking to the lawn. The priest there, I don't know what's making them so happy. So that's my on tour that I need you. And that's my end of my talk. Thank you very much. And again, I'm so happy. I'm pretty sure if this, there's a lot of friends that I'm familiar with you. I don't see you since 2 years, since this stupid pandemic. And I say hello to you virtually here. And I'm so happy to back to you guys.
Thank you, Wenqing. That was wonderful. I think people are ready to travel when they can. Are there any questions? I know it's a little late for folks, but you know, there's lots to still come. Are there any questions for Wenqing before we turn it over to Lynn for show and tell?
I just wanted to say hi to Wenqing. I miss her a lot.
Hi, Ron.
Hi, Wenqing.
I remember there's a story I have to share.
Oh, no.
Ron was on the grassland and we went to a most remote village trying to find some noodle shop that there's not even a name on that restaurant. And then we came into the restaurant, the Tibetan. They want to have his goods. They want to exchange his goods. That was so funny story. And then they
Wenqing,
yes.
it's Tanya. Hello, and I want to tell the group that the tour that Wenqing mentioned is highly, highly, highly recommended when we can travel. I only went to Szechuan, not the Yunnan portion, but it was amazing. And Wenqing did a great, wonderful job arranging everything.
Well, I hope after
Encourage you to join her.
you guys can come back to me again. I'm really
I will.
sincerely hope that the OCA trip that Mary and I we already worked and Dr. Jiang we already worked on a lot. That a pre on the VOC trip didn't happen. That's some new area we have to explore in Vietnam, and that's a trip in April, maybe next year. I hope if this stupid pandemic is gone.
I want to go, Wenqing,
I finally start my trip again. I need some income.
I just want to say that I got to go on the September gentian tour, and there were fields of gentians that were just incredibly turquoise and royal cobalt blue in clumps. There was thousands and thousands of them. It was fantastic. It was amazing. Of course, the ethnic groups and the food and everything was wonderful. And I'm looking forward to going to Yunnan. That's what I want to go. I want to go to Yunnan. Is my dream to do it with Wenqing. That's
well, Ron, you're always welcome because Ron is over there. Like, stop! I see this. I saw that. Then if we don't know what this fish is, it's like, Ron, what's a fish? Tell us the name.
That's true. He's a walking textbook.
Dictionary.
It's so nice to see you, Wenqing.
Oh, I miss you. I know you're the only one has your fancy, nice costume on our fashion natural tour. And I know you're angry because you got lost. Once we lost the K, you can
Yep. Wenqing lost me.
I lost him, and how he was angry with me. The first sentence I said to her is, "Kay, I'm gonna promise you, I'm not gonna never lose you again."
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
All right. Thank you all. I do want to let's all thank her before we transition over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am so happy that this everything worked fine out again.
Well, time is moving on, and we hope we'll be able to see you in person someday soon.
Wenqing, I'm taking off. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Wenqing.
Bye. Bye, Mary.
Okay, Lynn, it's all yours. Lynn told me today she had over 70 people or 70 pictures.
They're
Not
gorgeous.
70 people.
Well done.
Yes. So she's getting it all. She spent the time to get it all organized. So as usual, really well.
Can I screen share now?
Yes, it's all yours.
Okay. Can you see it?
Not yet.
No.
The upper down here. Nope. I think we need to get off slideshow and do screen share first. Screen share first. Screen share before slideshow, I think.
No, there you go. I see it. I see it. Whatever you did worked.
What do you see?
We see a big pink epi.
Okay.
Oh,
Now do you see a slide?
Aaron Olson.
No.
Oh, there's the title.
Okay, here we
slide.
go.
Yep.
Major control here. Okay. Can you also see this panel of people here? I'm not sure how to get rid of them. Is that in the way?
It's fine. It's fine.
Fine. Okay, here we go. So we have another gorgeous show and tell table tonight. We have contributions from 24 people and several fun pet and orchid photos. And there's so much in bloom in April, we had to cut back the number of orchids per exhibitor or we'd be here all night. So let's get started. The order in which I show them is the order in which I receive them. Come on. Click on the arrow. I am. It's not working. On this arrow. Oh, okay. This one. This one. There we go. Okay, here we go. So I'm so sorry to have missed Karen Olson's photos last month. She sent them to me. I never saw them. So let's start with what we missed. This is Karen's Masdevallia Ziegler's Love Golden Gate, which has an FCC AOS. This is a complex hybrid composed of the 4 colorful species you see on the left. Ziegler's Love has received 26 AOS awards, and this one, awarded to Tom Perliti in 2012, is the only Alba form. So Karen has a very rare Masdevallia here.
Lynn, we aren't seeing full screen.
Is anybody seeing full screen?
I
Yeah.
am. I am. On mine.
Yes.
I'm not.
It's just a little cut off at the bottom, I think.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Oh, is it?
But we can see most of it.
Okay. So this is Karen's Masdevallia Schroederiana. Her tag says Vences. So I'm guessing she got this from Vince Brown, who was a very active member of several Bay Area societies before he passed away a few years ago. This is a cool growing Masdevallia from Costa Rica, found at around 6,000 feet. It's easy to grow, so this is a good windowsill candidate if you can provide cool winter nights down into the 40s is best, and filtered light. And this is Karen's spectacular Adrobium Lindley, which gets a round of applause, everybody. She says this is the best bloom she's ever had on it. It's in a 12-inch pan with 9 spikes. She grows it on the northeast end of her greenhouse and gives it a cool, dry winter rest. Den Lindley is synonymous with Den aggregatum, but it's not a synonym for Den Gigantifolium. The difference is Gigantifolium has only 1 flower per inflorescence. This species, Lindley, is widespread across Southeast Asia. Needs very bright light to bloom this well. Nice job, Karen. This is Stuart Menaker's Phalaenopsis Georgiana. And while Stewartiana is typically a creamy white, I put one down in the bottom right-hand corner. This yellow form has received only 2 AOS awards, and it's identified as Forme nobilis. Stewartiana is a species found in the warm, humid forest of the Philippines, and Eric Christensen's Phalaenopsis monograph, sorry, I'm trying to hurry, indicates that this sulfur yellow nobilis form is very rare, and it's in limited cultivation in the Philippines and Taiwan in private collections. So Stuart, thank you for showing us yours. And Stuart shows us another warm to hot growing species endemic to the Philippines. Phalaenopsis Schilleriana with beautiful dark green leaves, mottled silver gray, and the underside is purplish, which make this a really beautiful phal to have in your collection, even when it's not blooming. The shell pink flowers are fragrant. They're about 3.5 inches wide. They last several weeks, and Schilleriana is used extensively in Phalaenopsis breeding. It's been used in nearly 30,000 progeny, which is pretty incredible. And this is Stewart's Serapedilum pulchellum, which is also known as Bulbophyllum trigonopus. On the right side is a view of the underside of the flowers. The long front portion of the flower is actually the two lateral sepals, which are fused together. Bulbophyllum is the largest genus of orchids, with over 1,500 species found in all tropical areas of the earth, and with hugely diverse plants and flowers. But what they all have in common is they have a hinged lip that waves in the breeze. Pulchellum is a hot growing species from Malaysia and Thailand. And this is Stewart's Bulbophyllum
Oh, nice.
Lasiocylum, the name meaning shaggy lipped, which we can see here. Like in the prior photo, the lateral sepals are the elongated parts, but in this case, they're not fused together. This is a miniature sized plant with the flowers about 1/2 inch wide and 1¼ inches long. And I think this gets the weirdness award of the night.
Looks like a baby bird.
I thought it looked like an old man.
Whoa.
It's very weird. Gia Lee shows us her Dendrobium Kingianum. These vigorous Australian beauties are in their full glory now in the Bay Area. They thrive in our outdoor climate. They're beautifully fragrant, and the species comes in many color forms, from purple to rose to pale pink to white, with and without freckles. You can see some little dots on the lip of this one. There are over 1,500 hybrids made with Kingianum, which takes the color palette even further, even into the yellows. So if you don't have a 6 of these in your collection, you should look for them at your farmer's market or your local nursery or at SFOS's upcoming sale. Gia Lee shows us her Cymbidium Mad Doctor. The clone numero trace was awarded an HCC to a local grower, Ouija Coughlin, in 1993. Cymbidiums are probably as important in our Bay Area outdoor collections as the Australian Dendrobiums, and they're equally bulletproof and beautiful bloomers. So you should have some of these also. Gia Lee also shows us this lovely pink Cymbidium with a beautiful lip with deep burgundy edges and spots. Larry Robert shows us Dendrobium Kethei. This is a species endemic to lowland Thailand. This is the first time Larry has had it bloom, and his photo shows very well how the single flowered inflorescences come popping out between the braided leaves and also along the leafless canes. The flowers are about 1 centimeter or a little less than 1/2 inch, and they're very cute little things. Tanya Lamb shows us a lovely presentation of her Leptotes Bicolor. This is a charming miniature plant with oversized 2-inch blossoms, and it's also a great windowsill grower. It'll do well either mounted or potted in a free draining mix, or and in medium or filtered light. It's not very fussy. Also in intermediate to warm temperatures. Leptotes is a Brazilian species. Those little lips are like neon lights. This is Tanya's very floriferous Dendrobium Tetragonum. Let's hear the applause. The name Tetragonum refers to the 4-sided or the square pseudobulbs, which if you look closely, you can see in the photos that the pseudobulbs are square. This hails from southeastern Australia. The inflorescences can rebloom, so don't rush to remove it. And it's fragrant too. Tetragonum is often used in hybridizing with other Australian dendrobiums to bring vibrant color to the hybrids. And we'll see an example in the next slide. So remember Tetragonum. And here is Tanya's Dendrobium hildepaxan, which is a primary hybrid of Tetragonum by Dendrobium speciosum. The latter, shown on the right, generally lacks the vivid markings or saturated color. So that's what Tetragonum brings to the party in this colorful hybrid hildepaxan. This is Tanya's Renanthera poipu, a cross of Brookie Chandler and M. schuttiana. A blooming Renanthera in your collection is like turning on a neon light. It's so bright and colorful. This is just gorgeous. This is a species from Southeast Asia and the Philippines, and it wants Vanda-like conditions, very bright light and warm temperatures. So it's probably best suited to a greenhouse, but you may be able to get it to bloom on your windowsill. We haven't seen Dale Martin on show and tell for a while. Welcome back. This is his, see if I can pronounce this, Periorara, Bangkok Sunset Alba. And a synonym for Periorara, this will make it a little clearer. The synonym is Rhynchorhides. So it's a hybrid of Rhynchostylus celestis with 2 species of Arides in its parentage. So it's fandaceous, it's a warm grower. It likes bright light. And this is Dale's albiform, the non-albiform photo I just pulled out of Orchid Whiz for comparison, but I think Dale's albiform is really charming. Dale loves his multifloral Paphiopedilums, and here's one of them. This is Paphiopedilum, which is a primary hybrid of Hainaldianum and Philippinense, and it's highly awarded cross. It's interesting to see the buds beside the fully open bloom, which is about 5 inches wide and even longer with those beautifully marked pendant petals. And another of Dale's multiflorals, this is Paph Richardianum, a cool growing species from Sulawesi. According to J. Fowle, this may be a synonym for Paphlowii variety Richardianum, as described by Gruss in 1994. Whatever it's called, this is an interesting and it's not an often seen species. And then there's Dale's big island zoo. So take a look at this. You notice anything unusual?
Yeah.
Like there are 2 dorsal sepals. And the pouch looks pretty freaky too. Dale says it's a first bloom seedling. So he doesn't know yet if it's a stable mutation or just a freak occurrence. He said he received another plant, a different cross from this year from the same wholesaler, and it had 3 pouches. He said it was really grotesque, but he wonders if maybe they were using overly harsh chemicals when the paths were initiating buds. Stay tuned, I guess we'll find out. This is Judy Carney's gorgeous Lelia Jungiana, a Brazilian species. Ooh, perhaps the most striking of all the Lelias in my view. It's also the fussiest to grow unless you are Judy Carney or Cynthia Hill. The flowers are about 5 or 6 inches and they're very large for the size of the plant. In fact, you can barely see a leaf on Judy's cork mount. The flowers are so large. The very long frilled downward pointing lip with 7 orange keels is characteristic of Jungiana. This is just lovely. This is Judy's Phalaenopsis lobii, a miniature species found in the Eastern Himalayas, Bhutan, India, Vietnam. It's monopodial, but often it forms clusters of stems by branching off at the base. And it typically has flat roots, which you can see in the right-hand photo. The flat roots continue to branch and elongate. Judy's finger in the left-hand photo shows how tiny the plant and flower size are, but it's not a shy bloomer, as we can see from this cluster of creamy white flowers with brown bands on the lip. Charming little guys. This is Judy's Cattleya coccinea, which is a cross of 2 tetraploid parents. So I'm sure these are big flowers. Neon Light is the clone, and it was awarded an FCC in 1992 to Frank Fordyce, who many of us knew, at the Sonoma County Orchid Society show. This is a Brazilian species from the cool coastal mountains, so that's a clue on how to grow it. Ready for the next one? Hit the applause button. This is Judy's Dendrobium Lingua Forme, which she got from Bob Hoffman, a longtime SFOS member. What a profusion of creamy white, spidery looking flowers. This is an Australian species, and on the far left, you can see that on the far left, you can see the tongue-shaped leaves, which give it the name Lingua Forme. The leaves are thick and fleshy and along creeping rhizomes that form an almost cactus-like mat on the mount. This is a cool grower. It's happy going into the 30s at night. And from what I've read, it adapts to a variety of light levels. It's a very rewarding plant, but this is a really special blooming. Susan Anderson shows us her Angraecum ursianum. found in mossy rainforests of Madagascar. This little gem is rarely found in US collections. It's the first time I've seen it. It has a 1-inch crystalline white flower, which is larger than the miniature plant and which has a 6-inch long nectary. It's very pretty mounted on the Susan's piece of driftwood. It's a nice presentation. Susan shows us her Campylocentrum Robustum. There are 84 species in this genus Campylocentrum, found in the tropical Americas, and Robustum is found primarily in Peru and Brazil as a medium-sized epiphyte. It looks like it's definitely Robustum creeping around Susan's cork mount. And Susan shows us 2 Arangus. The first is this adorable little Arangus Harriotiana, probably not named after James Harriot, of all creatures great and small, if you've been watching that on PBS. Arangus is a genus spread through tropical Africa.
Mine are coming up.
What's that?
Oh.
Okay, Arangus is a genus spread through tropical Africa, Madagascar, and the Comoros Islands. And this miniature is a worm grower. Alan Koch of Gold Country Orchids has had this awarded a CCM with 3,000 flowers in 2011. My guess is that's where Susan got her plant, which is blooming beautifully here. This is Susan's Arangus fastuosa. Fastuosa from the Latin for proud or magnificent, referring to the proportionately large flower. This is a twig epiphyte from Madagascar with leathery leaves and pristine white flowers, which are fragrant at night, suggesting that it's moth pollinated. It's a worm grower, it needs to be kept moist. And I believe Susan grows this on her water wall in the greenhouse where it gets misted each day. It's a beautiful blooming, very nicely done, Susan. This is John McCallan's beautiful Paphiopedilum fanaticum, a naturally occurring hybrid of Path malapoense and micranthum from Southeast China. You can see the immense flower size compared to the plant and the leaves. The flower has beautifully marked petals and a blood red staminode, but it's really dominated by that fabulous inflated pouch. It likes low light and likes to be kept moist. This is John's eye-poppingly red SLC Richard Stone. The taxonomists have, of course, renamed it Cattleya Richard Stone. This is a cross made by Frank Fordyce in 2004. And if this looks like a lot like the Sophronitis coccinea we just saw from Judy Carney, that's because the parents of this hybrid are 75% coccinea. This is a beautiful round flat flower, over 3 inches in size, and John says it's just this bright in person too. And here's John's closely related Sophronitis or Cattleya manticara, which is a miniature Brazilian species from the mountain range known as the Serra de Mantiqueira, which rise over 5,000 feet. So this is a cool grower. It's used to nighttime temperatures in the low 40s. The flowers are less than 2 inches, as we can see by John's thumb. This is another beautiful flat bloom. And John's Cattleya intermedia cerulea, which he said he didn't even know was budding until he discovered it in full bloom for the first time when he went out with his camera. It's another Brazilian species found near the East Coast at low levels, where it grows in high light, almost in full sunlight, but with a lot of air movement in the upper branches of the host tree or shrub. Cerulea refers to the bluish tip and keels in the lip. This is Tom Pickford's RLC, Mark's Valentine, a Fred Clark hybrid, just registered in 2012 and already with 4 AOS awards. It's a complex hybrid comprised of about 40% Sophronitis coccinea, where it gets that fabulous color. It's a cross of Cattleya Circle of Life by Little Toshi. And the lip is really beautiful with the contrast between the deep red and the gold inside the throat. This is quite a spectacular blooming of Tom's Lycaste Shonan beet. And the other images I found of this unawarded hybrid are pale to deep rose in color. So this is obviously an alba form. The flowers are beautifully clean and all 7 are facing us. This one gets a wow. Let's give Tom a hand. This is Tom's Cattleya Carol Hauserman Lucy, registered by Hauserman back in 1964 when orchid corsages were still the rage. Okay, who beside me remembers prom corsages? Easter corsages, anybody?
Oh, yeah.
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 So this hybrid is over 70% mossy-eye, which gives it that big, full, blousy shape. These flowers are 7 or 8 inches and they just look at that lip. This is Tom's Cattleya Fire Dance, a cross of Cattleya aurantiaca and LC Fire Island. As you can see, it's over 60% aurantiaca, where it gets that orange neon color. Deborah Vale's Qualter shows us Masdevallia Schilleriana Cunuk, which was awarded an HCC in 2007 on Anna Chai's flowering. This flower is about 2 inches wide, about 4 inches long, including the caudae or the tails. The dorsal sepal shows a beautiful rose pink veining on a creamy background. This is really lovely, Deborah. And Deborah's Brassolalia Maikai Mayumi. This is a primary hybrid of Cattleya boringiana by, by Brassavola nodosa. And it has received 19 AOS awards, nearly half of them to this clone, Mayumi. It's a good indoor plant as it needs bright indirect light and warm temperatures, and it can bloom twice a year or more whenever it matures a new growth, pops some flowers. This is Deborah's Cymbidium Kushu Moon Yohiki, a hybrid of Lovely Fantasy by Ensign Moon, and it's blooming nicely outdoors at Deborah's home in San Francisco. The Cymbidiums are nearly done here with the heat we've just had, so it's nice to be able to see a few more of them tonight. Hold your breath. This is Dave Hermeyer's Peony collection. I know we just saw a bunch of them in China, but stand up and applaud this one. Dave says, quote, "The peonies do great terrestrially in San Francisco in a spot with good drainage. These are in sandy soil on a slope. They take almost no care, and the main group is about 15 years old." End quote. Now this really fries me because I have 2 little pots of peonies, which I diligently dry out in my cool greenhouse all winter. I don't even look at them when I have a hose in my hand, and they reward me with a bloom or 3. But this is just a spectacular display. He's got 3 different types of peonies here. The Confusa is up, if you see it in the very top above the Formosana. And then over on the right are the Polar Suns. Gorgeous. And this is Dave's Cattleya crispata, one of those charming little rupicolous or rock-growing Brazilian Laelias. They're usually found on exposed, almost horizontal ledges where they're somewhat protected by valosia bushes or other vegetation. So in cultivation, they prefer filtered or diffuse light and intermediate to warm temperatures with reduced water in the winter. Dave is growing it mounted so that it dries out between waterings. And I guess we can add Dave to the list of folks who successfully grow those fussy Brazilian species, Laelia Junkiana. This is a very mature plant, and the photo shows how large the 6 flowers are in comparison to the plant size. It's best grown mounted like this, in cool temperatures, very bright light, and lots of water while it's growing. But I know from experience, you cannot get water in those new growths or they blast. More delightful opries from Roberta Fox this month. This is Ophrys speculum and Ophrys scolopax. These bee orchids are native to the Mediterranean countries of Europe. They're dormant, meaning no water, from approximately April when the leaves die back to late October when the nights cool off. So they're the opposite of what we're used to doing with our cool, dry rests. Once watering begins in the fall, the leaves emerge, and blooming is late February to early April. These flowers mimic the appearance of female bees and even smell like them to newly emerged males. This is Roberta's Orchis italica, another European terrestrial with its region and culture similar to the Ophrys, but it blooms a little bit later. This is called the Little Man Orchid. And I snipped one of the flowers out of Roberta's picture. It's on the left, so we can see the little man a little more clearly. He's even smiling. This cultivar has spotted leaves. Other cultivars have solid green leaves. Note that even as it's blooming, the leaves are already showing signs of dormancy. And Roberta shows us Gastrochyllus calceolaris, native to South Central China, East Himalaya, Southeast Asia, elevations from 3,000 to 7,000 feet. The right-hand photo of the whole plant shows the mount laid down on a 4-inch wooden basket for scale. And it shows how the flowers hang below the plant. So to see their beauty, you need to view them from below, look up at them. This plant grows relatively cool. Roberta grows it outside on her patio, which we saw in her background tonight, in Southern California with winter lows around 40 degrees. And this is Roberta's Microcelia aphylla, a miniature leafless species from Central and East Africa, near the coast, from sea level to about 300 meters. So she grows it in her greenhouse for both warmth and humidity. With the leafless orchids, their roots contain chlorophyll and they do the photosynthesis for the plant. These charming little flowers are about 1/2 inch, and Roberta's plant is beautifully grown to have this many flowers. I think this one gets applause too. And I was just about finished with the show and tell slides when this Phalaenopsis nuda royal blue opened for Roberta, and I had to add it in. As Roberta points out, this is not what orchidists call blue or cerulean. It really is blue. It's from southern and southeastern Australia and Tasmania. And Roberta says she thinks she's finally found a spot where they get enough sun to develop and bloom well. The cool thing about these is on cloudy days, they stay shut. They open again when the sun is bright, which is why they're known as sun orchids. They form a terrestrial colony with subterranean tubers, and it really is exceptional to see one of these in the United States. Heidi Arno shows us 2 photos of her Cymbidium Excalibur Galahad, which she says is a plant she's had for many years, and it always blooms at this time. And it was shown at one of our first Zoom meetings last year at the very beginning of this COVID thing. The clone Galahad has received awards from both the American Orchid Society and the Cymbidium Society of America. It's noted for the maroon spotting and the yellow keels in the lip. This is Heidi's Dendrobium Kingianum, which she says was planted at the kids' corner at our 2020 POE with plants donated by Tom Perliti. This plant was cared for by an adult, but it is indeed blooming. Heidi says she missed doing the kids' corner this year. It would be fun to know how the kids did with the orchids they took home from POE. She grows this outdoors in Modesto, waters it daily during the hot summer, and fertilizes it weekly. This is Jeff's Masdevallia Jungiensis, Bob, which is a clone Pui Chin had awarded by the AOS, crossed with a Bob Hamilton hybrid Masdevallia tourmaline. The Jungiensis parent is a very high elevation species from Bolivia, from 8,000 to 9,200 feet. So it's a very cool to cold grower, and I'm guessing that Jeff grows this hybrid outdoors in San Francisco. He's nodding his head. This is Jeff's Panthopsys Astrophora, which by the tag looks like he purchased it from Andy's Orchids. It's a miniature epiphytic species from Venezuela and Bolivia with red-purple crystalline star-shaped flowers. It's so tiny it's probably pollinated by a gnat or another weird little insect. And this is Jeff's Platysteles Jessopiorum, which is named after the American orchidist Phil Jessup, and which is endemic to Ecuador on the western slopes of the Andes in wet montane forests at around 5,000 feet. So that means it's a cool grower and it's a dainty little thing. Chris Nietro shows us Paphiopedilum Gigantifolium, named for a 20th century German gardener, although this is also a synonym for Paph Appletonianum and also a synonym for Paph hainanensis. It's a small growing species from Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. It's a humus epiphyte with its roots buried deeply in leaf litter and leaf mold, moderate to filtered light, which tells us how to think about it in cultivation. Chris's is the albiform, meaning it does not have red pigment or anthocyanin in its plant tissue. There's a little shot of the typical color form bottom right. Chris's is lovely and it shows off the little hairs along the margins. He says it just expanded to fully open on the day he took the photo. Very nice. This is Chris's Paphiopedilum, first described in 1982, so we don't yet see it much in collections in the US. It's a species from Yunnan, China. Perhaps Wenqing showed it tonight. I don't remember seeing it. Again, Chris has some more unusual album form with the photo lower right of the typical color form. These are 4 of Chris's Phalaenopsis Schilleriana, a species found only on Luzon Island in the Philippines, growing high on trees where it receives only filtered light, and it's a warm grower, so it's a good windowsill candidate. We saw one earlier from Stuart Menaker. It's interesting to see the variation in the leaves on these 4 different plants, as well as the variation in the flowers. The 2 on the right, the flowers are more typical of the jungle collected Schillerianas, while the 2 on the left have rounder, fuller flowers as a result of line breeding, especially the top left one, which is a 4N or a tetraploid plant, meaning it's been chemically treated to double the chromosomes to get a larger plant, larger, fuller flowers. This is a beautiful collection, Chris. This is Chris's Ophrys sicula, the name meaning the Sicilian Ophrys. It's also been known as Ophrys lutea subspecies minor. This is another of the tiny Mediterranean terrestrial bee orchids, which attract male bees to pseudocopulate and thus to pollinate it. This is the smallest Ophrys Chris has growing in his collection, and it's, I think he said it's in a 3.5-inch clay pot. You can see by the comparison to the penny. These are mine. I bought this Dendrobium infundibulum from Cynthia Hill a couple years ago. It's a division of the plant on which she was awarded an AM and a CCE for cultural excellence in 2012 at our POE. Hers had 130 flowers on 19 spikes, so mine has a way to go. This is a species from Southeast Asia from 3,000 to 7,200 feet, so it can take cool to warm temperatures, but I found it is more floriferous in my cool greenhouse, which has nighttime temperatures down to 41, 42 degrees. The flowers are about 3.5 inches, and while they look very delicate and crepey, they're long lasting and they have a light lemony fragrance. This is my Caulkea nubigina. It's not the showiest flower, but it has 5 spikes this year and it's pretty cute. I purchased this from Ivan of Equihenera at POE 2 years ago. It's an epiphyte from Ecuador. I found at elevations over 10,000 feet. In fact, nubigina means something like born high among the clouds. So I grow it in my cool greenhouse, and it should do well outdoors in San Francisco, protected from heavy rain and also protected from hot temperatures. This is my Sologeny Lawrenceana, a fairly large growing species from southern Vietnam where it grows cool to warm. I have it in my intermediate greenhouse with nights no lower than 58. It's a large plant with, I think I have 9 or 10 of these 4-inch flowers. And there's all sorts of excitement going on in that lip, from raised keels to fringes to eyelashes, beckoning the pollinator to come on in. Winnie Wang shows us her Ludicea discolor, one of the so-called jewel orchids, which many folks collect primarily for their beautiful foliage, although Ludicea also happens to have lovely flowers. And I think the whole flower spike with the buds is quite showy. These are great windowsill growers because they prefer only shaded light. They like temperatures that you're comfortable with in your home. So if these are given too much light, the leaves fade to a red or even pink color, and they lose the vibrancy of Winnie's leaves. This species is from Southeast Asia, including in Yunnan, China, where it grows at around 3,000 feet. I think Wenqing had one on her very first slide. It's a warm to intermediate grower. This is Winnie's Platia Striata, a Chinese terrestrial found up to 10,000 feet. So it's a cool to cold grower with round, wrinkly pseudobulbs, which are mostly below the surface of the ground. This is a great outdoor grower in the Bay Area. The beautiful pleated leaves completely deciduate, that's my word, in the fall. And in the spring, the emerging new leaves are a harbinger of the new season. The erect flower spikes very quickly emerge from the center of the new growths, and the flowers are about 2 inches with dramatically raised keels in the lip to attract the pollinator to come hither. This is Winnie's Dendrobium C. Marion Snow King. Winnie says it was a keiki about 1.5 years ago, so she's delighted to see it with so many flowers this year. It's a nobly type dendrobium with the flowers popping out along the cane, and it blooms best with a cool winter rest, greatly reduced water in the winter. Nobly type dendrobiums are great windowsill growers. Jeffrey Doney shows us his big, beautiful Laelia purpurata. Purpurata season is starting. This is an epiphytic Brazilian species found along the coastal zone. And I've read that early visitors to the region reported that plants were so plentiful they even grew in the sand along the beach. Because of excessive collecting and habitat destruction, however, plants in the wild are now found only in very tall trees in remote, hard to reach areas. The elongated pseudobulb accounts for nearly half of the height of this stately plant. And it looks like Jeffrey has at least 10 big showy flowers. Very nice. Jeffrey also shows us his Paphiopedilum Gigantifolium, the giant leaf paph. He says the spikes are each about 4 feet tall with 8 or more flowers on each spike. Gigantifolium is a recently discovered species from Sulawesi, a terrestrial found on steep ravines with heavy shade at elevations of 700 to 1,000 meters. And this is Jeffrey's huge Cattleya hybrid, which unfortunately no longer has its name tag, but Jeffrey says it's a hybrid of Cat Trianii. It's very lovely, whether it has a name or not. Kay Klum shows us Sologeny Terensis, which is a small Sologeny from the Western Yunnan province of China on trees in montane evergreen forests, so it prefers moderate light levels. The flower is over 3 inches and has an especially patterned lip and longitudinal stripes on the sepals and petals. It grows for K in the intermediate greenhouse, but can take cooler temperatures as it is found at elevations up to 11,000 feet. This is K's Bulbophyllum tingaborinum, which seems now to be known as Bulbo pecten veneris. And the award data has all been transferred to pecten veneris. It's often seen in a coral to orange color form. So this lovely neon yellow is unusual. The species is from Southeast Asia at fairly low elevations. So K's is grown in the intermediate greenhouse because of its rambling growth habit with fairly long spaces between the pseudobulbs. It's well suited to being mounted on this rough textured slab. It's pretty. This is K's Masdevallia ignea. And the tag says yellow, and while it isn't yellow, it isn't red either, she says. So yellow is what the tag from Steve Beckendorf says, so yellow this is. This is a little cool grower. It's native to China, Laos, and Vietnam, and it needs diffuse light and good air movement at all times. So Kay grows it outdoors in San Francisco. 7 flowers on this small plant is very nice. This is Kay's Dendrobium Hancockiae, a species found in Yunnan and Szechuan provinces of China. It typically blooms on last year's mature canes with strongly honey-scented 2-inch flowers. This is a super close-up photo, Kay, shows the fine hairs covering the whole inside of that trilobed lip. Kay says this one is in the cool greenhouse. Water and fertilizer should be reduced significantly in the winter for this one. Jan Anderson shows us Paphiopedilum Philippinense by Gigantifolium. And this hybrid has actually now been registered. It's called Paph Boucle Blonde, which is French for blonde curls. It sounds sexier in French. So you can update your name tag, Jan, to Paphiopedilum Boucle Blonde. This is a cross of 2 warm-growing multifloral species from the Philippines. It's very interesting flowers. This is Jan's Area Havanica, or the area from Java in Indonesia, although it's widely found throughout Southeast Asia and as far as Taiwan and New Guinea. It's a warm grower, best with dappled light and good air movement. This could be another windowsill candidate. This is Jan's unregistered hybrid of Cattleya Kagaribidon by LC Spring Fires. It's a very complex hybrid, as you can see, with many generations of breeding in the background of each parent. And the result is this burnt orange eye candy. Very nice, Jan. Paula Shu, welcome back.
Ooh.
Shows us LC Mini Song Petite, which is growing in an empty clay pot. That's how green Paula's thumb is. She tosses some pseudobulbs into an empty clay pot and voila, she gets flowers. This is a hybrid of Cattleya Mini Purple by Mary's Song. And you can see it gets its splash petals from the Mary's Song parentage. The big nose and the lip is from the 30% Walkeriana in the background of this hybrid. And the flowers are wonderfully round. Looks like they're still opening, so they probably will still flatten out some more. Nice, Paula. Johnny Langland also gets added to the Lelia Jungiana good grower list. We just can't see too many of these Brazilian beauties. Next, we have something a little different. Robin Harrison is our guest from coastal southeast Queensland, Australia, and she's provided some images of what's blooming down under, where summer is done and rainy season has just begun. First is her Dendrobium Bigibbum, it's not Big Bum, Bigibbum, also known as Dendrobium Phalaenopsis. Here it's being visited by a very cool blue-banded bee, who she said tried and tried, but just couldn't wriggle in. The species are found in semi-arid regions, usually at low elevations. Bigibbum is used extensively in breeding, in fact, in over 8,000 progeny, and we enjoy them here for their very colorful and long-lasting flowers. Robin also shows us Sarcochilus niveus, or Sarc falcatus, found throughout Eastern Australia. We all love our little Sarcochilums, and this species is a little bit bigger, about 1.5 inches, is cool to hot growing species, also used extensively in Sarcochilus breeding, and these are strongly fragrant. And Robin shows us Pholidota imbricata, the name meaning shingled or overlapping, and these dramatic chains of flowers are formed in 2 overlapping rows along the inflorescence, making them look like they're almost braided. The flowers are about 1/4 inch. They're almost hidden by the persistent floral bracts, as you can see in the flower picture blow up. And finally, Robin shows us Dendrobium Devosianum, or one of the species that we refer to here as antelope dendrobiums. The markings are very distinctive, particularly in the lip, with bars and stripes and raised white keels to encourage whatever pollinator may be in the neighborhood in Papua New Guinea. Thank you for this glimpse down under, Robin. And I came across this. National Orchid Day is April 16th. So if you haven't hugged your orchid, that's a good day to do it. And now on to the pet parade. Dahlia does Tillandsias in Mary Nesbitt's greenhouse at California Orchids in Bolinas. She's open by the way, but only by appointment. And this is Karen's cat, Chet, on Karen's lap. And I really had to look at this, but you can see Karen's feet sticking out. And Chet is helping her read Orchids magazine, but I think the Catasetum article put Chet to sleep. These are Tanya's 2 puppies, Bailey on the right and Proud Oliver on the left, beside a Paph Appletonianum, both showing off their new sweaters, which were knitted by Tanya herself. How cute is that? And this is Gia Lee's finely whiskered kitty, who appreciates the fragrance of Dendrobium kingianum. And to close, I feel I should acknowledge the source material I use each month to research our blooming beauties. These are the ones that I rely on most heavily, plus a dozen or so genus-specific books or websites. Thank you all for the wonderful photos. Stay well and happy growing.
Great job, Lynn.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. Thanks for everyone hanging in there. We still have 47 going strong. So any other announcements or questions before we do the raffle? All right, here we go. So I've been using the random number generator in the background here. And so the first is the $35 gift certificate to Farm Fresh to You, and Gia Lee is the winner of the $35 gift certificate. And then we have 10 $20 gift certificates to, or gift codes to the Tiny Jungle. And I saw quite a few of our new members got in here this time, so good. So stay tuned. Let's see here. So Javier Perez Sanchez, Lillian Derrigan, let's see, Tyler Albrecht, Kathleen Wedham, let's see here, Eric Rice, Diane Langlois. I don't know if I'm probably slaughtering your name. David G. Hi, David. Lynn Page. So Lynn, I think Lynn and Daisy, we saw you at the beginning of the meeting. So you won first meeting. That's good. And Andrew Powers and Allison Nevis. Did I say it wrong? Anyway, I'll follow up with all the winners by email for how to retrieve your winnings. And stay tuned. Next month is our on May, what is it? May 5th? I forget what the date is exactly. May 4th. Tuesday, May 4th is our next meeting. Is going to be elections, as well as our speaker from Canada. Excuse me, what? Terry, right, on Neo-Phoenicias. So have a good month. Don't forget to send me information about the member plant sale if you want to do it. And Stuart's still looking for volunteers. Oh, one last thing before you all sign off. Save your boxes. I need boxes for the plant sale. So if you have Amazon boxes, break them down, put them aside, let me know, and we'll try to get them all at the end of June before the sale. Okay, that's it.
Okay, bye.
Bye, good night. Hey, Stuart, are you still on? Stuart?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Did we get any? I saw you said at the end there you need volunteers. So how many,
Yes.
did you get any?
Just Tanya.
Okay.
So
Thank
would
you,
they,
Tanya.
would they have us if we're just there Saturday?
He said one day, I could, which day is it? It's the,
Let's see, today is
it's the 27th
27th, 26th. I don't know. I have to look at it again.
Okay.
It's like the last weekend of the month.
Of April. That's like
Yeah.
24th, 25th.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Okay,
So,
well, I can actually come help too. So, and I could help bring stuff. So if you, me, Tanya, and
I'm volunteering Carrie.
okay.
He doesn't know it yet.
Do you want to do Saturday or Sunday? What day is better for you?
Saturday works better for us.
Okay.
So I was planning, or we can figure it out, but I was planning to, be there for setup in the morning and stay till early afternoon. Tanya is saying that she could come later in the morning and stay through the end of the day. So you could come